30 a.m. on this Tuesday, the 15th of November. We would ask that everyone please be seated as we call this meeting to order. As usual, we will start with our chaplain prayer, and I think we have Gary Jenkins here to offer prayer and the pledges. Maybe.
Good morning, everyone. And good to see all the children here today. Amen. Will you join with me in prayer? Precious Father in heaven, we bow before you, realizing you as the creator of heaven and earth. It is you who has established the governments of the world. For it is written, the powers that be are ordained by you. So, Lord, we ask that you please hear our prayer and guide our mayor and city council by your Holy Spirit as you endow them with wisdom, love, and integrity to conduct the business of the city this day. Bless our firefighters and police officers and all first responders. And finally, I ask you to be with Chaplain Marcella Jenkins, my wonderful wife, who's undergoing a procedure at this hour. And these things we ask in Jesus' name, amen and amen.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
You're faster than our turn is. Slow it down.
Prayers for Marcel. All goes well. Thank you.
This morning we have four proclamations, and the first one will be National Family Literacy Day. Do we have folks here in the audience who are joining us for this? Please come forward. Welcome. Glad to have you. You can stand right over here. And then we'll go up front and have a picture, okay? National Family Literacy Day, established by the 103rd Congress in 1994 and now marking its 28th anniversary on November 1st, 2022, highlights the importance of reading and learning for the entire family and emphasizes the impact that parents have on their child's learning. This day is celebrated across America each year and focuses on special activities and events that showcase the importance of family literacy programs that empower families and build a nation of readers. Literacy programs across the United States will observe National Family Literacy Day by holding readathons, book drives, workshops, and family activities at schools, libraries, and community centers to encourage literacy. As many as 1 in 6 adults struggle with reading and writing. By learning to read, individuals can gain self-respect and confidence and strive towards goals that otherwise would not be achievable. The National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution is a nonprofit, non-political volunteer women's service organization dedicated to promoting patriotism, preserving American history, and securing Americans' future through better education for children and adults. Education is one of the cornerstones of the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution. The Pocahontas chapter is committed to increasing literacy by promoting and supporting literacy programs. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 1, 2022 as National Family Literacy Day and call on all citizens to recognize the importance of literacy, celebrate the joy of reading, encourage residents to read together as a family, and to extend appreciation to our local librarians, educators, and literacy service providers. We will call November the 15th, the actual date. How about that?
That sounds better.
I'm going to give you this proclamation, and I would invite one or both of you to offer some comments.
Thank you for this proclamation. Family literacy is so very important, and nothing is more, learning for children. If a parent or an adult reads to them, this holds the keys to future success. So we want to do all that we can to promote that. Thank you.
Our next proclamation is American Recycles Day, and I know we have a bunch of people in the audience for that, so would you like to come forward? Come on. Bring your posters. Okay, you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
America Recycles Day is the only nationally recognized day dedicated to promoting and celebrating recycling in the United States. Held on and around November the 15th, American Recycles Day educates and encourages individuals on how to be more mindful of what they consume, where and how to properly recycle, and to pledge to recycle more and correctly in their everyday lives. Also known as National Recycling Day, this day began in 1994 after two employees of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality suggested the idea to the National Recycling Coalition. The first American Recycles Day was officially held on November the 15th, 1994, and had at least 40 states taking part. This is the perfect time for San Angelans to focus on our responsibility to address the challenges facing our recycling system. We can inspire our community and individuals to recognize the economic, environmental, and social benefits of recycling. Keep San Angelo Beautiful encourages citizens to pledge to reduce, reuse, repurpose, and recycle in every aspect of their life. It begins with recycling at home, work, school, and on the go. We can also buy products made with recycled materials and educate and encourage our friends to do the same. There are great benefits to recycling, including assuring our planet remains healthy, reducing landfill waste, and conserving natural resources such as oceans and forests. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, do hereby proclaim November the 15th, 2022 as America Recycles Day and encourage citizens to think about having more green, energy-efficient, and eco-friendly products in our homes while preserving our earth for future generations to come. Charlotte, would you like to offer some words?
Yes, just real quick. I'd like to thank our sponsors. Butts Recycling is with us today. Republic Services, we thank you so much. A couple of our major projects that we worked on in the past year, plus a few months, is our tire recycling project we're real proud of. We've removed over 15,000 tires in just a little over a year. These tires go to Burnett, Texas, where they are chipped into 1-inch squares and used for tire-derived fuel. The metals are stripped and sent to a foundry where they are turned into rebar and angle iron products. So we're real proud of that. We do have an event this weekend, so come out and join us at the Coliseum. 7 a.m. we'll be taking your tires, and they will go on to 4 18-wheelers. and they will go off to Burnett, Texas. So please join us if you can, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then I'd also like to mention Ella Elkins, who saves the oceans. She's a sweet little girl in our community that picks up plastic bags. And her first event with us, she collected over 8,000 bags and broke her world record. Her second event with us, she collected 12,750 bags. So she's well over 20,000 bags, and these bags go to a church in Mertzen, and I want to get this right, First United Methodist Church, the Prayer Shawl Group. And these ladies actually strip the bags and weave it into a yarn, and they make mats for the homeless out of these plastic bags. And they do this every single week. It's very tedious work, but they just love it. So we're happy to support Ella as well. And these students are from TLCA with us today in Miss Lynn's class, and I think they have some messages for us. So if you're a speaker, you're welcome to come up here.
Who would like to speak today? Come on. I know somebody does.
Can't figure out how to get.
Come right through here. Come right through here. We'll get you there. Come on. You want to start by, let's see, we need to be able to see you, so come here. And we're going to reorganize this. All right. You want to tell us your name?
Emma.
Emma? Emma will tell the audience your name.
My name is Emma.
Perfect. Tell us your message and speak into the microphone so they can hear.
At Texas Leadership, we want to help keep our city beautiful by recycling. We want to help reduce the carbon footprint and also help reduce the need for harvesting raw materials, save energy, reduce greenhouse gases, prevent pollution, and more.
That's a big challenge. Thank you. Well done. Okay, come on. And your name?
Steel.
Steele, tell us your message.
Recycling can also help improve water and air quality. These are building blocks for a sustainable growing community like San Angelo.
Perfect. Thank you. Your name?
Sophia.
Sylvia?
Yeah.
Okay, tell us what you want us to know.
By improving our recycling habits, we can help keep the environment clean and preserve our natural resources.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, let's.
Come on. You want to talk. Go right ahead. Tell me your name.
My name is Judah.
Judah, tell me what you want us to know.
That-
Speak right in here.
That beautification projects are often undertaken by city councils and groups of the community. In order to boost tourism or other commerce, we want to bring in revenue to our city.
Wonderful.
Daniel?
Daniel, tell us what you want us to know.
The Memphis City Beautification is the oldest city beautification project in the United States. It was established in 1930. Beautification has been around for a long time.
Wonderful.
My name's Haley, and what is beautification?
Go ahead and read it.
It is the process of making visual improvements to a city. This most often involves planting trees, shrubbery, and keeping the city clean. San Angelo deserves to be beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Anybody else? No more messages? Well, let's read these signs. Tell me what yours says. You might want to go back to the schoolroom now,
You don't.
even if you don't want to. Our next proclamation is Small Business Saturday. I think there's folks in the audience for this. Downtown San Angelo, Inc., in partnership with the ASU Small Business Development Center and the Chamber of Commerce, are represented as neighborhood champions of the American Express Shop Small campaign. As proud advocates of the Small Business Saturday Shop Local initiative, their mission is to help rally the community to support locally owned businesses during the holiday season. According to the United States Small Business Administration Office of Advocacy, America is home to 33.2 million small businesses, which employs 61.7 million people. Small businesses of 500 employees or fewer make up 99.9% of all U.S. businesses, according to their statistics. The future of small business is full of great opportunities for local economies and communities willing to adapt quickly. Small businesses account for 2 out of every 3 jobs added to the economy. In addition, many local makers bring their personal experiences, skills, and creativity to their products. By shopping local, dollars spent are filtered back into our city's economy, social relationships are built, resulting in better service, and unique products are readily available to consumers. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 26, 2022 as Small Business Saturday and encourage citizens to support the many small businesses of San Angelo by shopping and dining locally on this day and all year long. Dale, please.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to introduce Agape Monoa. She wrote the proclamation. She's an ASU intern working in our office. So I wanted to thank her for the research that she did in putting together the proclamation. I just want to remind everybody that when you shop small, you're making someone's dream come true. So remember that as you go out, and we're really in the crux of retail business, so get out there and make sure that you shop small. Thank you very much.
Our last proclamation is Concho Christmas Celebration Day, and I think Lee Pfluger's in the audience to receive. "2022 marks the 29th anniversary of Concho Christmas Celebration's annual Tour of Lights. The celebration, with over 3 million lights, is one of the largest Christmas lighting events in the state of Texas. The event offers a 2.5 mile walking or driving tour beginning behind the main post office on the corner of Abe Street and First Street and ending at El Paseo de Santa Angela. Those involved consist of hundreds of community volunteers who greet tour guests, inmates from the Department of Corrections and Tom Green County Sheriff's Office Community Work Detail who assist with installation of Christmas scenes, the members of the San Angelo Restaurant Association who supply meals to the inmates, and the RSVP volunteers who deliver the inmates' meals. The community Christmas tree lighting ceremony will be held Saturday, December the 3rd, 2022 at 5:15 p.m. at the corner of South Chadbourne and West Concho Avenue. Activities will include the San Angelo Community Band, conducted by Dr. Constance Kelly of Angelo State University, and the Twin Mountain Tonesmans, directed by Mark Clark. The 20th Annual Lights of Christmas Parade will follow the community tree lighting at 6 p.m. The parade may be viewed on Chadbourne between 4th Street and Concho Avenue, on Concho Avenue between Chadbourne and Oaks, and on Oaks back to 2nd Street. The Tour of Lights can be seen Sunday through Thursday from 6 to 10 p.m. and each Friday and Saturday from 6 p.m. to midnight, December 3rd through December 31st, 2022. Now, therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby declare December the 3rd, 2022 as Concho Christmas Celebration Day and encourage citizens to join the activities and view the magnificent holiday lights that have become a community treasure.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for all your support over these many years. And on behalf, it's my pleasure that on behalf of we have about 400 community volunteers that put this event on every year, and we've always enjoy celebrating the season and the birth of Christ. So we invite you all to come out and see what we've done this year, and look forward to a season that's going to be the best ever. Thank you very much.
With your proclamations complete, we will now move into the public comment. Issues or concerns not on the regular agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, address all comments to the dais, begin by stating their name and address or single-member district number, and limit their remarks to less than 3 minutes. Do we have individuals in the audience today who would like to come forward for some public comment?
Good morning, Council. Anna Bartosh, SMD 5 or SMD 1, single member District 1, Mr. Hebert. Looking at the consent agenda, I'm not aware of, I know y'all may discuss, but we, the citizens, don't get to be a party to this discussion. And items D, E, this is in the consent agenda, D, E, F, G, H, I, K, L, N, and S, and T are all authorizing the city manager to negotiate agreements and spend quite a bit of money. Is there any ever reporting to we the citizens about any of this? And can we expect the city manager to address all of these issues and at least give a synopsis of what went on? Thank you.
Are there items on there, Daniel, that you want to discuss that have already been discussed and are just on the consent agenda?
Not necessarily, Mayor. I know that the authority is given by the city council, as it always has been, not just here in this city, but other cities as well. The final authority to negotiate contracts does come to the city manager. It doesn't come back to the city council, but it is something that, again, city council gives direction, and from there, I move forward with that negotiation. I don't stray away from the direction given by council, and I work within that. If anything, what I try to do is negotiate a lower price for any, of course, I'm never going to negotiate a higher price, but negotiate a lower price for anything that comes up that's under my purview.
What we will do in a little bit is ask council members if there's any of those items they would like to pull. But at this point in time, we're open for public comment. Any further public comment, please come forward.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, you
on this
can.
one? Sandra, let me ask this to Teresa and Julia. Is there any information that's given to us on the consent agenda that's not public to the general public?
Generally, everything on consent agenda would be available to the general public.
Right,
with
so
public information
it comes
requests.
public, Anna, Wednesday or Thursday, and we all get to research it line by line, item by item. If we have any questions, we have the, I was fixing to say, choice to pull those at any time. If any constituents ever call me from my district and say, hey, I'm concerned about this one, that has happened. But as far as it goes right here, typically, the information that we all have is shared at the exact same time. And if somebody has questions, they usually present that to their council member, and then we discuss it with Daniel, or we bring it up right here, just to make sure you understand.
And as I said, when we get to the consent agenda, I will ask council members if there are any items that they want to pull for further discussion. Any public comment, further public comment? If so, please come forward.
Morning, I'm Mike Burnett, Executive Director of Concho Valley Community Action Agency, and I reside in single-member District 1. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I've talked privately with some of the council members and the mayor about CVCAA's continued role as an advocate and service provider for our low-income and homeless neighbors. CVCAA partners with the city, counties, and other area agencies in our work to combat poverty. CVCAA is active with the Concho Valley Homeless Coalition in its work to assist and serve our homeless community. The homeless individuals and families are our relatives, our friends, and our neighbors. For you on City Council, they are your constituents. To help our homeless neighbors, it will take a community-wide effort. We're in the middle of the National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week, which started on November 12th and continues through the 20th. My hope is that by speaking with you and through area agencies working in partnership, we can bring an awareness of the serious issues the homeless face in our community so that we can create some lasting changes. Several years ago, the only operating homeless shelter in our area was closed. Since its closing, our homeless neighbors have been without constant or reliable shelter. In the summer of 2021, the camping ban law was passed. This made it illegal for individuals to be homeless. The legislation comes after similar propositions passed in Texas, making it a misdemeanor to sit, lie down, or camp in public areas. The immediate need San Angelo must figure out is how to safely shelter these individuals, especially now that we are heading into the winter months. Programs like Out of the Cold and Into the Warm serve as Band-Aid at best. I'm asking that the City of San Angelo create a homeless shelter task force to grow community efforts in reestablishing a shelter. In addition to the traditional homeless shelter, one option would be to create a sanctioned campground for our homeless neighbors. The camping ban legislation has within it a way for local governments to submit requests to the state for designated campsites that meet certain criteria. A sanctioned campground would be the first of many steps towards adequate sheltering for our neighbors. I'm also asking that the city consider adopting a homeless Bill of Rights to further protect those at risk. Different cities and states across the United States have adopted these as a sign of support for their homeless neighbors. To combat the issue here in San Angelo, we are facing a large challenge. It's one that has been out of mind, out of sight too long. We have hundreds of our neighbors living on the streets, under bridges, in their vehicles, and in tents. Are we quick to discard these individuals? We should not. We should work together to provide shelter and assistance, and we cannot wait. I invite you to come to the Concho Valley Transit Annex on November 21st to our next Homeless Navigation Day, where you will see 10+ area agencies providing direct services to our homeless neighbors. This will enable you to see how an already thriving community of partnerships is working to meet the needs of our homeless neighbors. This partnership of agencies, plus the resources of local government, will enable us to move quicker to providing shelter. I look forward to working with you, the city, and our other area agencies for the safety of our homeless neighbors.
Thank you, Michael. Further public comment?
White, District 6. I'm really pleased to see Lee Pfluger here today. Daniel Valenzuela. After months of me publicly exposing one of your most notorious scams against the city of San Angelo, and after months of you and other city officials desperately attempting to silence me, it should be obvious to every city official in this room that I will not rest until justice is done regarding this corrupt matter. For 17 consecutive years now, Lee Pfluger, who happens to be one of the richest men in West Texas, has somehow enjoyed the benefit of a free pass regarding appropriate management of the Hotel Cactus rooftop sign at his 14-story Cactus Hotel in the historic district of downtown San Angelo. In 2005, Lee Pfluger removed 12 of 22 rooftop sign letters at the Cactus Hotel, reportedly in order to upgrade the sign letters' interior illumination. Those 12 sign letters have remained missing from the rooftop sign mounting structure ever since, turning what used to be the iconic historical crown of downtown San Angelo's skyline into a disgraceful, embarrassing eyesore visible for miles. In February of this year, Lee Pfluger personally told me that it would cost approximately $400,000 to, quote, put the letters on. If that estimate is accurate, then removing the entire gigantic sign mounting structure could easily double that amount, putting potential sign restoration or removal cost in the neighborhood of $500,000 to $1 million or more. The City of San Angelo Code of Ordinance legally mandates that the Hotel Cactus sign immediately either be appropriately renovated or immediately removed. As you know, Daniel, when Lee Pfluger fails to do either of those, the City of San Angelo is legally mandated to immediately remove the sign and then to legally force Lee Pfluger to reimburse the city for removal expenses. These financial facts are just some of the dirty little secrets regarding this corruption. Maybe the City of San Angelo government doesn't want to be forced to spend an enormous amount of city funds to remove the sign. Maybe the city is anxious about having to legally force Lee Pfluger to reimburse the expenditure of those funds. There are many other obvious maybes regarding this corruption, but we'll leave those for another time. It's truly disturbing and infuriating that this entire city council continues to hide behind the obvious lies from City Manager Valenzuela and City Attorney Teresa James that my allegations are false. You should be ashamed of yourselves for not conducting due diligence as you are sworn to do on behalf of San Angelo's citizens. City of San Angelo's sign code regulations are crystal clear regarding this matter, and none of the insultingly outrageous legal interpretations by city officials can change that fact. I formally challenge Daniel Valenzuela or any other city official to publicly offer a legitimate defense, a legally legitimate defense against my corrupt allegations.
Thank you very much. Teresa, you want to answer some questions and comment on the sign ordinance, please?
I think I'm going to take that opportunity.
We'll go right ahead.
These accusations are made about city staff and city council, and we take them very seriously. Several times they've come up in public comment, and we have remained silent pending research on our part and behalf. I have requested this, and I've got some statements and some information here that represents what the city has, and what I have a personal statement in here too. In February 22, city staff and council members were made aware that Mr. Zane White was proposing a project to renovate the cactus sign. When the efforts to the proposal failed, Mr. White began what he termed, and this is his words, an aggressive campaign to get the city of San Angelo to take enforcement against Mr. Pfluger to compel him to agree with Mr. White's project or otherwise repair the sign. Mr. White made a complaint to the Sign Development Service Department, who began an investigation into the complaint. The complaint alleged that the sign is abandoned or defective since the sign was missing letters and no longer lights up. On May 18, 2022, a notice of violation was given to Mr. Pfluger under Chapter 12, Article 4, Section 12.04.014 of the Code of Ordinance, which addresses the sign maintenance and removal. So we pursued it at that time. As part of the investigation into the complaint, staff verified with a structural steel inspector that the sign is A, structurally sound condition and is not dangerous. That's point one. A drone was also flown around the building as to inspect the structural integrity and so the fire department could evaluate it. No structural or safety concerns were noted during that investigation. In addition, when providing information related to the complaint, the property owner indicated that the removal of letters to spell hotel on one side and the building ACTUS letters on the other side was done intentionally, not as a function of dilapidation or proper maintenance, but just so there were 5 letters on each side. Recent decisions by the U.S. Supreme Court severely limit the ability of the city to find sign violations based upon the content of the sign, rendering portions of our sign ordinance unconstitutional and unenforceable. Since the property owner changed the sign to read as it does intentionally, and there are no structural or safety issues that have been found, the sign cannot be found abandoned or defective. I mean, that's just how it is, merely because we want it to look a different way. As a result, staff closed the file in August of '22 and continues to evaluate the rules and regulations as they apply to the historic signs of the city of San Angelo. All of this information was provided to you, Mr. White, on August 31st of 2022. Though notified that the complaint was closed, Mr. White has acted towards city staff and city council, and I witnessed this again last night at a town hall meeting. These actions include, the first one is gaining access to City Hall building while it was closed during the lunch hour and attempting to enter the city attorney's office when it was closed. He publicly criticized and accusing members of city council and city staff of corruption through social media, but requesting to be friends or join their private social media accounts. And Mr. White, it is at this point I'm notifying you that your requests are unwanted and to stop attempting to contact me on any of my social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. That's the public notice to you at this time. Repeatedly attempting to file citizen complaints in the city prosecutor after being told they are not complaints that the city would have jurisdiction over, and repeatedly using his right to speak at council during public comments to make accusations of corruption against city staff and council without providing any fact that would indicate this occurring. On October 28, 2022, Mr. White made a formal criminal complaint against City Manager Daniel Valenzuela, alleging abuse of official capacity and official oppression after Mr. White was removed from the city's attorney's office by the San Angelo Police Department. As standard protocol, that complaint was forwarded to the Texas Rangers, which Mr. White has stated, on November 8, 2022, after reviewing the body cam video of the removal of Mr. White, the Ranger declined to conduct an investigation into Mr. White's complaint. His statement is, there's no basis for the investigation, as I could not find nothing in Mr. White's complaint, nor in the body-worn camera videos which would constitute a criminal offense committed by City Manager Valenzuela. The Ranger then went on to state that the decision of the officer to arrest Mr. White and remove him from the property was based solely on his refusal to leave when directed by the officer, not Mr. Valenzuela, and was done at the request of and not done at the request of City Manager Valenzuela. The City of San Angelo takes allegations of corruption seriously. Mr. White has not provided any information that would indicate the action taken by the city in regards to the cactus sign is improperly based on the state of case law related to regulations of signs or the condition of the sign. To be clear, no further action can or will be taken with regards to the sign on top of the Cactus Hotel unless the condition of the sign deteriorates or the U.S. Supreme Court reverses recent direction on the limits imposed on the cities with regard to the sign regulation. We found it important to request to say this. Sometimes it's questionable whether what we say appears on a personal agenda or a public agenda or how we represent council. But this right here is our summary of all the accusations that you have brought forward to us. If you have anything else, we wish you would, make that request of city attorney, but at this point, the accusations we have here in this whole place is closed. I'm done.
Thank you for that recap, Tom. Teresa, do you have anything to add?
No, ma'am. Well, yes, ma'am. I do have one thing to add. The sign issue is an issue. The state of the case law on the issue has very much evolved recently, and we are looking at all of our sign regulations to make sure they comply. You guys have taken numerous actions in doing moratoriums on certain signs, changing and suspending various provisions of our sign ordinance in order to accommodate some of these cases. So until, as Tom said, there's a change in that case law, there is nothing we can do about what the sign says, and we're not finding there's anything structurally wrong or dangerous about the sign. So there is nothing else that we can do.
I appreciate everyone putting the time and effort into recapping this issue so that the public is well informed and understands the position that the City Council and I as mayor are taking, and to make sure you better understand the position as dictated by law. By law. It's not a personal agenda item, it's by law. Thank you very much. Any further public comment? Seeing none, then we will move into our consent agenda. I will ask each of the council members if there's any item that they would like to pull from the consent agenda for further discussion. Larry.
E, O, and U.
E, and U? Okay. Karen?
C, please.
Harry?
Larry's already pulled mine.
Tom?
I've covered nothing to pull.
Tommy? Okay. With that, may I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda with the exception of items C, E, O, and U? Did I miss
Moved.
any of those?
So move.
So moved by Karen, seconded by Harry. Any public comment on the consent agenda with the exception of the items that we are going to open up for discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Seeing no opposition, the consent agenda has been approved with the exception of items C, E, O, and U. We will start with item C, consider awarding FC-01-23 to Duncan Mechanical Services Incorporated in the amount of $141,653.75 for the full replacement of 11 HVAC units at the Chase State Office Building at 622 South Oaks. Bob, you're on.
Morning, Mayor, Council. This is a fair bid. It's to replace units that are probably going to eventually fail in the building. Most of the units are original issue, dating back to the early 2000s. Several have been replaced since then by the previous building superintendent. He, before he retired, identified the units that most needed replacement, and this is probably the beginning of a multi-year plan. We don't have enough money to replace them all, and frankly, you don't want to. You want your units to age over time. So the plan is over 4 to 5 years to replace them all and then monitor them and then keep that on a rotation basis. Staff believe it's a fair bid. We've checked out the contractor and I think it's okay. And there is money for this.
Thank you, Bob. Do we have questions for Bob?
I do, yes.
Go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for providing the bid record and making it public. I know everyone appreciates seeing that you indeed solicited and received 4 bids and made your choice following that receipt of those information. I just have a couple of questions about procedure, I think. I can see that the funding is coming from capital line within Fund 201, governing state buildings.
Correct.
And while I certainly understand that the Chase office building is adjacent to the fort, it seems unusual to me. It's not a building that generates any tourism. It's an office building. So I think my question is, how did it come under your jurisdiction, and who benefits from the rent received from that
Sure.
building?
Excuse me. Let's roll the tape back to 1980. That building used to be a manufacturing concept, the Monarch Tile Corporation. And the Fort Concho Museum Board in 1980 purchased the entire mega block bounded by Oaks, then Avenue B, Wool, and then Avenue C. Specifically because that block contained, attached to it, 2 original barracks buildings, Barracks 1 and Barracks 2. It was a major purchase, a major property acquisition. It happened before my watch, but if I were there, I would have done the same thing. Over time, the buildings were rented out to various organizations. Monarch Tile left San Angelo shortly thereafter. And then, under the leadership of former State Representative Rob Janelle, the complex was renovated, bonds were floated, and it was turned into what is called today the Chase State Office Building after beloved pediatrician Dr. Ralph Chase. Frankly, this is one of the best things ever that happened to the fort and to the community. It brought together 13 state agencies, which were scattered all over town, serving people who usually didn't have public transportation or any transportation, and it dramatically improved the appearance of the building in the area. It also spun off economic assistance to Fort Concho since the fort bought the property under the city's auspices. A portion of the rental fees paid every year support the fort's operating budget. Also, this wasn't planned, but you may recall a number of years ago when the FLDS event took place, that was ground zero headquarters, and virtually every state agency that monitored and managed that event was in that building. Tourism, no, it's not a place you go if you're visiting from Iowa. But if you're a citizen who needs assistance with various state agencies, it's a very efficient place. And it also houses some extra storage facility for the fort. So all in all, it is a terrific addition to the fort economically and logistically.
You want to tell us when the bonds expire?
This is the last fiscal year. We're in fiscal 23. And the certificates of obligation, which were issued 20 years ago and then reissued to save some money on interest, they will be fully paid off at the end of this fiscal year. I've been asked by the Assistant City Manager, Rick Wise, to put together a short, long-range plan on how we can move forward and maybe lessen some of the bite that the fort takes from the general revenue budget, and to look at long-term viability for the state building and its capital needs. And we're working on that now.
I want to thank you. I'm pretty certain that I'm not the only person that benefited from that history lesson. It was really interesting.
It is a very interesting story,
It is.
and certainly most cities don't run forts, and most forts don't run state office buildings. So it's a definite A to B to C, but it's truly been a great development for the city and for the fort.
Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
I do want
Go
to
ahead.
add, very quickly, the good news, of course, about paying off the debt is right now the city's general fund is contributing toward the operation of the fort. So once it's paid off, that's less money, taxpayer money, that's actually going to be contributing toward the fort. It can be used for infrastructure, it can be used for other purposes, though. So I just want to make sure I pointed that out.
We ask
better.
of Bob every year, when are those obligations paid up? And so we've been looking for 2023 every year.
It's here.
It's here.
We finally made it.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And
Yes, Tommy?
Bob, after the meeting, I want to talk to you about a short, long-range plan. I need a little help with that.
There should have been a comma in there.
Sorry, Bob.
3-slide limit.
There you go.
Don't- If you get to know Bob, you learn not to challenge Bob with anything to do with the language, because Bob can turn you inside out and upside down. So we'll talk about a short, long-range plan.
I'll check with my grammar advisor.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bob.
Karen, would you like to move for approval of item C?
I would.
Is there a
Move for approval.
second?
Second.
A second by Tommy. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes six.
Christmas to all.
Thank you. 6-0. We'll move on to item E. Consider approving TIPS contract number 210907 for police vehicles to Silsbee, Ford, Silsbee, Texas, and Lake Countries Chevrolet in Jasper, Texas, in the amount of $624,000 for the purchase of 12 units, with the option to purchase one additional unit, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute all related documents. Ryan, you're on.
May I say something first, ma'am?
Yes.
I did not plan on pulling this item, but Mrs. Bartosh over there motivated me to ask you this, because there's a lot of money here that we're talking about, and I think the community needs to know how this all happens. So what I'd like from you is to describe the entire process that you went through, and now we got a bill for it. Does that make sense?
Can, and if I leave pieces out that you want to know more about, then please ask me to fill it in.
Thank you, Anna.
One would be local versus Jasper, Texas.
So in general, when we start to pursue vehicle purchases, we evaluate the process of what it is that we need. In this case, police vehicles are a priority for us. We buy them every year for this particular item as we're discussing. Those vehicles we generally like to shape and size to the department's requests, the certain options that we're looking for, and that applies to many of the other vehicles that we buy as well. In general, again, we do like to publish bids when it's appropriate to do so. We don't always get to, and I'll elaborate more in just a moment. At that point, once we have either a bid or, in this case, a purchasing cooperative quote, we pursue that purchase as if we are gaining approval from council, requesting that approval at this time, for example, and then issuing that purchase order with the hopes that those vehicles will be delivered in a short amount of time. Now, to speak to the local versus out-of-town nature of this particular item, if I could do that, vehicles and equipment have become increasingly more difficult to purchase, and we are very carefully considering how we can get that done in this climate. In this case, Ford and Chevrolet both have rearranged and continue to rearrange their ordering bank that we can pursue many, many times. And often cases, it's at a point where we cannot function within their order bank. For example, the Ford police vehicles, the order bank was open in August. When we found out about it, there was no time to get a bid in, and it closed before we would have ever been able to take any action. Now, that's the order bank for the entire model year 2023. So we have no other action in this case except to pursue vehicles that a vendor has acquired in some other manner. And in this case, Silsby Ford has done that, and we have those options available to us. And so the purchasing cooperative bid was selected as the best means to purchase for this time because we cannot put out a bid. If we did, we wouldn't get any responses to that. Local vendor was unfortunately unable to provide those units. And the same applies to the Chevrolet, the Lake Country Chevrolet piece of that.
I'd like to add to that the items that we purchase off of a purchasing co-op have been bid to go onto the co-op. There's a provision in the law that allows us to be members of these co-ops. They bid the items, they put them on their listing, and we can purchase them, and that meets the bid requirements. So it's not like you can just list anything. There is a process they have to go through, and those have been competitively bid to be on that particular purchasing co-op.
Is that clear? Perfect. Any further questions for Ryan? Larry?
How many steps did this go through within city government before it met final approval? There's a lot of hands involved here, and I think folks need to know that this wasn't one person that did this. Can you give me an estimate of, or even name some of the units in city government that went through the approval process on this?
Yes, sir, and I don't intend to leave any out. Generally, the process starts with me. As we begin budgeting for the next year for equipment replacement, I reach out to departments to make sure that we are purchasing their desired functional equipment. And then from there, after working with that division, I speak with my superiors, which is Director of Operations and Executive Director of Operations. And at that point, we then pursue through purchasing the correct method, whether that be a bid or purchasing cooperative. Generally, I'm requesting from the vendor, if they have a purchasing cooperative, to provide me that quote, which is then at a point, I believe, reviewed by both purchasing and then the agenda item by legal, if I have that proper. So all of those hands are involved in this, and ultimately all of yours to make that decision.
I heard 6 steps.
Right?
Mayor, if I could. Before it arrives to council.
Mayor,
Yes,
those
sir.
are just the pre-purchase steps.
Yeah.
There are steps involved in the actual delivery and post-delivery activity also. So he is jumping through a lot of hoops to make those purchases happen.
And I'd like to add also that even after the decision's made by Ryan and he wants it on an agenda, Ryan, Patrick, Pete, Shane, David, Teresa, Jeffrey, Tina, and Julia all approve the item on the agenda itself. So it's a very complex process. They love it.
We just want to make sure it's right, and we have lots of folks that help us get it that way.
The question I had, and I think you answered it already, but okay, as I understand it, you would have preferred to go through Jim Bass.
Well, I didn't say that specifically. However, I do like publishing bids, and we always welcome and appreciate local response. In this particular case, the timeline, the order bank timeline just was not in our favor for both the city of San Angelo as well as our vendors. That's a timeline set by the manufacturer that we all have no control over.
Another problem you seem to have is it's an inflationary period. I saw your smile. Tell me about it.
We are experiencing some very unfortunate inflation costs related to equipment. We were very thankful for the increase that the Equipment Replacement Fund for the General Fund received this last budget year, and we're doing everything we can to stretch those dollars as far as we can, and we're seeing some real inflation. Yes, sir.
Further questions?
I would like to thank Mrs. Bartosh for surfacing that, because a lot of people in the community don't know the wickets that this all goes through, especially when you've got as much money being spent as we have. They should have a very good feeling for this. These were very well thought out, and there was due diligence to each one of these actions.
And I think you'll see that in all of these. Anytime you see my name on there, it's almost the same process every time, and that's what I come to you for, is for that approval to purchase equipment. So.
All right, Larry, would you like to move for approval? Okay. There's a motion. Is there a second? Second by Tommy. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Seeing none, saying none, motion is passed 6-0. We will now move into item O. And item O is consider a resolution accepting a piece of donated art to commemorate Charles and Joanne Powell and allowing the art to be displayed in the San Angelo Regional Airport near the baggage claim area. Hi, Jeremy.
Hi. Good morning, Mayor, council staff. Jeremy Valgardson, representing your fabulous San Angelo Regional Airport. You all know Joanne and Charles Powell, and he served on my airport board for years and years. And when he passed, the airport board decided that we wanted to do some type of memorial for him, just to highlight some of the success that he's had in the community, and also his wife. We didn't want to leave her out because she's been very instrumental to the success here. So this item's been on my airport board agenda for the last year, and the board is finally ready to bring it to you for approval. So actually, I brought Mr. Bruce Partain, who's kind of been heading this project for airport board. He serves on my airport board now. And the artist, Alejandro Castanon, who is a local artist, is also here to answer any questions. So I'll turn it over to Bruce.
Howdy. Bruce Partain, single member District 1, and I do serve on the airport board. So as Jeremy mentioned, this is one of those evolutionary ideas. First, we thought maybe a plaque would be appropriate. Then we talked about benches, and I'm kind of a visual person, so I said, what about artwork? What would be the process to do that? So the conversation, I've been told the green button is the button. There's the Powell. So, of course, Colonel Powell passed away in 2020, and then Joanne passed away in 2021. So originally the idea was Colonel Powell, but it just seemed like we were being directed to include Joanne, and it does seem very appropriate. In the meantime, several other commemorations have taken place. Buildings have been named after the Powells. There's a really nice memorial on the base. Some of those places are not quite as accessible to the general public, and so I think that the airport, with over 50,000 employments per year by commercial aviation and 20,000, I think, operations in general aviation, turns out to be unintentionally a great place to look at artwork as much as learn about the community. I think the key thing to remember, for us at least, was we knew that this would be a project as it got to be discussed, this bigger scale, this original art, that if we could fund it privately, then we could go quicker, although quicker is relative. We've been after it for about a year just to talk about it. So as the lead on the project, I talked to a couple of artists, and knowing that Alejandro has a really bright, vivid, youthful design ethic, seemed like a very good choice. There has been some conversation, I know, about, did you put this out for bid? We did not. And I think if we had asked for public funding, of course, we would have done that. So if that's of any concern, that was the background for that. And we also know that art by committee is slow. We're a committee. It's been slower than an individual would have done. But we did have lots of discussion amongst the airport board. We did go through the Public Art Commission and had questions and answers with them too. So I think we followed the protocol that would be done for this kind of artwork, even if it had been publicly funded. So as of July, we were approved by that institution. And I guess the other questions people might have is, there's some of the style. And this is more of a personal thought too, is as far as what will be included in the artwork. Obviously, we want it to be done professionally by someone who can capture an individual. And Alejandro is here today, and he can talk to this as well. But you want some accuracy, obviously, but also you want to have some passion. And so I think you see some of the passion in his work. So far, what Alejandro has done is that you're getting to kind of see inside the workshop, how does an artist actually produce material. So he's done a sketch of Colonel Powell just for his own edification and getting into the subject, but also a pose. The pose he is working on, Joanne right now, kind of getting that down. But what you see here is preliminary sketches. It's not indicative of what will finally be done. I will say that it's going to be a very large piece of artwork, partly because in a public building, in this building, when you've seen some of Alejandro's work and in City Hall, those are much bigger than you might, if you had your tape measure out, they're actually a lot bigger than you might imagine. So this will be pretty good scale. And as it turns out, there is some available space. And actually, I think it's maybe God's will in a way that it's right near baggage claim. And you think, well, by baggage claim? And as it turns out, everybody who has checked a bag is going to hang out at baggage claim, and they could be looking at their phone. You think of maybe a young military member in San Angelo late at night, first time looking around going, man, I'm kind of getting a little depressed. There's just nothing here because they haven't experienced anything in San Angelo yet. And they're some of the first people, the images they'll see is Charlie and Joanne Powell with Goodfellow artwork in the back, probably some San Angelo things. Just maybe a welcome, maybe a selfie is going to be taken, and they'll send this back to friends and family going, well, I've arrived in San Angelo, and the Powells have greeted me. I think it's just kind of a cool element to this that maybe we didn't anticipate. It's also in the public access area as opposed to behind TSA. Doesn't mean that there actually already is some nice artwork up in the TSA area, but when it was placed there, it was not inaccessible to the general public. So I think there's opportunity to rethink the whole visual part about what is the airport. It's a place where a lot of commercial activity takes place, a lot of tourism, but also it's a potential place to just inform people, educate them, maybe excite them about where they are, and hopefully when they come back, always a greeting place that they realize that they are appreciated for being in San Angelo for a day or for a lifetime. So that's basically what I have. I'd be glad to answer any questions. And Alejandro's here in case you have any artwork question, because I'm a photographer. I'm not an artist. So,
Larry?
I've seen some of the artwork. It's beautiful. Okay, my complaints aren't with that, but I still, I'm not comfortable with the baggage claim area. I think Charles Powell would come back and haunt us if we put it there. When I'm in the baggage claim area, the focus that I have is I'm making sure that somebody else doesn't take my bag. I'm not really concerned about a picture on the wall, really.
Okay. Point taken.
Yeah, I'd like to rethink this one. Also,
where would you suggest?
Oh, I don't have the slightest idea. I know you got a bare wall there. Perhaps the upstairs by the gates. I don't know. You've got large TV sets out there with advertisements on them. I don't know that that's the best area. But the bigger thing is we have lots of people in this town who have made San Angelo what it is today. And I think maybe we should expand our thoughts on this and consider how we're going to do this for a lot of people. One of my complaints about the airport is that they've tucked Mark and Jack Mathis around the corner to where you have to make a concerted effort to get over there to see them. I'd like to see it better than that for them as well as the Powells or other people who have been significant in the development of San Angelo to be honored.
I totally agree. I think the Mathis brothers in particular, it's a nice looking trophy case. Their picture, their portrait's in there, but you have to be directed to go find it. Houston Hart, how do we get these great you start going through the list and maybe you're going to have a wall of fame instead of large portraits, but I think it's an opportunity. This building and City Hall both have taken that opportunity. I just think it's in a location. I totally agree with you. I would love to, pursue the next one.
I agree with Larry that there should be a broader perspective in terms of what we choose to put on the walls of the airport. Mathis brothers specifically, people don't know why it's called Mathis Field. Most people in the audience probably don't know why it's called Mathis Field. And that is something that I think is important. And whether it's that small case or not, I think the story of the airport needs to be told. And Charlie and Joanne are really dear friends of mine. So this is not about picking these two people to honor and celebrate their contributions to San Angelo because they were significant. And no one had as much passion for our city as these two individuals have. So I'm excited to celebrate them, and I am excited to have Alejandro portray them. But I will say, Joanne was really, really skinny. Just FYI.
We might get you to help choose the outfit, too, because Alejandro's done some research with photos. Terry McKinney, the Powell's daughter, has been very helpful to me as far as just gathering photographs. There's lots of formal portraits, but go back to the time period we're trying to portray, back more about the 1980s. There's not as more snapshots. So there's been maybe some input on that would be very much appreciated. Jeremy, do you have some other comments?
Yeah. Just to speak on the location, that we don't have a lot of empty wall space, and airports are all about revenue generation. And so if you look at all the other walls, they've got signs on them. So we have an advertising contract with McLaughlin. I don't know if we would have to amend the contract to free up some wall space to do something like this, but we look at generating revenue first. That's the reason why we put it in the baggage claim. It was a blank wall, but we do get a lot of traffic over there, not just because of baggage claim, but the rental cars are over there. So if you want to rent a car from Avis, you got to come to the airport anyway. You're going to go to that side, and you wait a long time to get a car if you're going to Avis. So there's people standing there waiting. It is a high visibility area, so we are open to suggestions. We're going to need to look at the advertisement agreement if we are going to consider moving the advertisements from one wall to another to highlight the history of the airport.
Well, I think the other thing we need to keep in mind is if we can expand on the idea of celebrating Mathis Field, why it was named Mathis Field, the history of that airport. We need to keep everything in perspective so that we don't outsize their picture, the artwork, but have room and available space to also look at adding to that presentation of those people who've been contributors specifically to the airport.
Yeah, and I think Airport Board would agree with you. We've had that same discussion. This is kind of step one to a bigger phase. And I know you've been through the airport. You've seen a lot of the blank walls as you're coming down the big stairs. It'd be nice to highlight. There's a lot of space in there to highlight the history of the airport in San Angelo. So this, I think, is step one to a much bigger project over the years.
Larry?
Would the artist like to say some words?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure. I just wanted to express it was an immense honor to be approached, although I don't know if I was the first choice, Bruce. But either way,
you were picked.
I was picked, and that's great. It's an immense honor. I served 8 years in the Air Force myself during the Iraq War. My father served 21 years during the Desert Storm and served in Albania as well during that conflict. So it's really a great opportunity to be able to tie my own personal history to as well the efforts that I've contributed over the years here in San Angelo of being part of the community and aligning that with what the Powells also contributed during their time here. So I just wanted to express that so you could see that I am invested in the accuracy of the portrait, and there's a lot of thoughtfulness that goes into it. And as Bruce had mentioned, it was a challenge just because from a concept standpoint, I wanted to portray Colonel Powell in uniform. And I felt that was really important for any visitors that were coming through the airport to see that he was definitely part of Goodfellow as well as San Angelo. So the challenge there was to be able to composite poses that I actually was the sitting pose for Colonel Powell. My wife was standing and line. So as you noted earlier, the body types don't quite line up, but it was there just to provide an example of this is where we want to go with the pose. And it was very thoughtful in the action. And you can't see very close in, but I was going to have him holding a copy of the Standard Times in his hands because I thought that was an important tie from himself to the community. So little things like that, as well as the background, was going to be a little bit more thoughtful in terms of Goodfellow Air Force Base and possibly displaying even an aircraft that he flew, I believe, during Vietnam. So yeah, a lot of thoughtfulness there. So I'm open to any questions and, of course, suggestions as well.
Well, one of the things, we all know who they are, but how do we tell people who go look at your wonderful artwork who they are? Is there a plan to have a plaque? Is there a plan to have some details about why their portrait is there?
Yeah, it's a good point. Absolutely. I don't think, words and pictures are the ultimate combination. So there'll be a proper bronze plaque, carefully proofed, and you all are welcome to help proof it because this is where sometimes the devil's in the details. But yeah, I don't think it would mean much without that information. So it's a good point.
Alejandro.
Go ahead, Tommy.
While you may know, perhaps you don't, Colonel Powell was not the wing commander when we nearly lost Goodfellow. That was back in 1990. But I can tell you, I served on that committee. He was very instrumental in working with and through the Pentagon, with and through all of our elected officials in Washington and at the state level. So if there is any way, when you said Standard Times, I don't know if that's something that can be weaved into the artwork. That may be way too much detail but anyway, I wouldn't say due solely to his efforts, but he had a huge part in saving Goodfellow Air Force Base.
Yes, sir. I did some of that research as well, and I read up on that, and it was quite amazing to see the amount they were able to accomplish, and that we're still enjoying the fruits of that as well. Even Goodfellow winning many awards in conjunction with the city of San Angelo. So
it was amazing to me to see the connections that he had still at that point after his retirement, some 7-8 years later, with and through the Pentagon.
I agree with you. Yes, sir.
So I think we've complicated everything for you, and so good luck.
Thank you. I appreciate the challenge. Thank you so much.
All right, Larry, you want to make a motion?
Will the motion be the acceptance of the artwork, but not necessarily the location?
I think it should be the acceptance of we believe that they are deserving of having artwork reflect their commitment to San Angelo, but that we also want to see further artwork to tell the story. But that's pretty complicated. And so you know what we want to do. You hear what we want to do. So make it so that they can move forward on this.
The item is actually a resolution that you're approving that accepts the donation of the framed piece of art canvas and doesn't address at all the location.
I'd very happily make a motion.
Well, it says airport terminal, but it doesn't say specific, doesn't say baggage claim.
So a resolution, do we have to pass a motion on a resolution? So Larry, you're on.
Yes, make a motion.
Is there a second by Karen? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes 6-0. We will now move on to the item U. Consider approving the Tiers Board recommendation of an amendment to increase the incentive grant to the amount of $50,818 for an already approved project in the South Tiers located at 416 South Oak Street. John?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions. You want a kind of an overview of how we got here, or?
Well, I guess so. I guess we're concerned about, whoops, what happened? We went from this one amount to another amount. We'd just like it clarified.
Yeah, basically, we were dealing with 14 or 16 projects that were requested, looking at either 7 or 8 of those that were funded at the time, and then putting together all of that for the Tiers Board. This one, it was a list of 2 pages of improvements, and the board typically would recommend approval of eligible expenses. And so on these 2 pages of 40 or so improvements, about half of them were ineligible. And so as we totaled up the eligible costs, basically all of the costs on page 1 were eligible. What we thought all of the costs on page 2 were ineligible. Mixed within those were 2 eligible expenses that just didn't get included when we presented it to the board. And so again, when it went to them originally, their recommendation was to fund all eligible expenses at 75% of the total. But having left that small amount out, we went back to the board at their October meeting, and they recommended approving that additional amount for the amount that was left out. And so that's coming to you for final approval of what the board, that board adjustment.
And there are monies available for this?
Yes, there are funds available. This is in the South where funds are tight, but there are still sufficient funds available, and there would have been at that time had they chosen to, or had we presented it with the full amount, they could have approved it at the time. That's correct.
Any other questions for John on this item? All right, John, you want to make a motion, Larry?
Make a motion.
There's a motion for approval. Is there a second? A second by Tommy. Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing no, any noes? Hearing no noes? No noes? Then we'll take a vote. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With none opposed, the motion passes 6-0. We will move on to the regular agenda. Comments regarding items on the regular agenda may be made by the public when each item is discussed as outlined above. Applicants, proponents, and appellants are exempt from the time limit above and instead must limit their remarks to less than 5 minutes. Item A, consider awarding the purchase of 2 ambulance boxes to Fraser Limited using HGAC contract number AM 10-20 in the amount of $391,072 for fiscal 2023 for the purchase and installation of 2 ambulance modules, utilizing general fund balance in the amount of $277,396, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute all related documents. Corey, you're on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, so this is just a request to, here, let me hit the green button. Award Fraser Limited the contract to mount 2 box modules onto 2 Ford chassis.
Questions? Comments? Is that the entire presentation?
No.
Yeah.
You get bonus points if that was the entire presentation.
Exactly, we're waiting.
There we go. I was hitting the green button. So the cost total for both box modules is $391,072. And they're budgeted from, like it says there, one's going to be from the 501 fund and one from the uncompensated carry cost reimbursement. So these are budgeted for already, and this is just kind of a standard step we do every year. So, any questions?
Larry?
Is this a replacement or is this additional to the fleet?
This is replacement. We replace 2 every year.
Does this mean we're going to have to replace the truck itself at some time in the near future, or is that not germane to this? I
Yes,
don't know how old your vehicle is.
In addition to that, we purchased 2 cabin chassis Fords, and then we take those 2 cabin chassis to Houston, where Fraser will mount the 2 boxes on each unit. So, yes, I think Mr. Kramer, he's the one who takes care of the cab and chassis, so this is just the 2 box modules.
Ryan, you want to come up and talk through this process on this? Because I think we have found value in not buying the unit with the chassis with the box on top of it, but by buying them separately, there's cost savings, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. In the past, we have compared the cost of just buying the entire unit, pre-built, if you will, from Frazier, and it is in our best interest to bid out the chassis and then send the chassis to Frazier on our schedule virtually, and then have those boxes either ready to mount or mounted when our chassis arrive. So we do split it apart to save the dollars, plus that allows us to get the chassis that we actually feel fits the bill, if you will, with the options that we want, instead of just accepting whatever Frazier has available. So that is in our best interest, yes, ma'am.
Does that answer your question, Larry? Other questions from council? Seeing,
got one, Brenda.
yes, go ahead, Tom.
So Corey, just looking at this box versus the old box, is there a lot of changes and updates between an old box and a new box to how you can provide the information to the hospitals when you're in transit?
There is a lot of changes recently, and forgive me, I'm new and I've been drinking a lot of information through a water hose, literally. So I'll do the best I can.
But this gets us in compliance with whatever we would need if somebody would look at it from a state
Yes, especially safety. The last few years, I think there were some incidents in recent history, and some of the oversight from the state of Texas and such has made it much more difficult to live up to their standards, I guess, so to speak, safety-wise especially.
Right.
So,
But it's my understanding this brings us up to compliance. Thank you very much, Corey.
yes, sir.
Yes, Daniel?
Mayor, I just want to make a quick comment. There are times, of course, that the chassis does outlast the box, and we actually save money by replacing the box on the chassis that we currently do have as well. So we've done that numerous times, and that's something that I like about the whole concept about bringing the box and actually setting it on the actual chassis. Again, it's a money-saving measure.
Well, the wear and tear on the vehicle is greater than the wear and tear on the box. So one will run out before the other. So
Yeah, it gives us
good
options in the
strategy.
future, so it's nice.
Yeah. Okay, with that, then I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
So moved by Tom, seconded by
Second.
Tommy. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of approving item A, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing no noes. Item A is approved 6-0. Item B, consider ratifying the professional services agreement by and between the City of San Angelo Development Corporation and the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce, and authorizing the board president or their designee to execute all necessary documents. Michael, you're on.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Michael Dane, Acting Economic Development Director. The Coast City Sea Board approved the renewal of the expiring contract with the Chamber of Commerce. The expiring contract contains the following terms, and those are the terms proposed in the renewal. 2 years in length, $262,500 per year, paid quarterly beginning January 1st. What was not part of the motion and what I would be part of my recommendation, I recommend approval, by the way, of this item, would be that you direct me, or that you have Daniel direct me to pursue, after this is approved, to pursue an amendment that the scope of services section be amended to include updated services and performance measures. The way this went through Coast City Sea, they did not take an opportunity to update that section. The chamber personnel said, we think that needs to be updated. And in discussing this item moving forward, the mayor observed that that section does need to be updated. So it was an obvious thing. I think other council members have observed that that needs to be updated. And so your opportunity today, obviously, is to vote this up or down. If you vote it up, my suggestion is, which is my recommendation, that Daniel direct me to pursue an amendment to the contract to update that section. If you vote it down, we will attempt to update that if we can, do it in a timely fashion when we bring it back to council with updated terms.
Do we have questions for Michael? I have a couple. All right, so I agree that the dollar amount is very digestible and a good dollar amount. I'm a big believer that economic development is hugely important to the city of San Angelo. And I believe that hiring the right people, and I believe we have Michael Looney hired, he's the right person for the job. But I also believe in giving him a strategy for success. And I believe when you look at these Exhibit A scopes of services, it's really a scope of services that would not allow one to be successful if they were rated and reviewed based off of these scope of services. So I'm a big believer that we need to re-review these scope of services because in 2022, which this contract would go into 2023, life has changed since these scope of services were written. And I think to push it through quickly through COSA DC without reviewing those, knowing that market conditions and other issues have changed, we as a council need to expect that we are re-reviewing those and making a scope of services that are executionable, have a path forward, a body of work, and something that really, when you come back to review the success and the challenges attached to economic development, there's really a program that you can reflect on and say, this worked, this doesn't work, what do we need to change, what do we don't need to change. In going through this, I'm astounded, quite honestly, that there's 14 tasks. It's too many. I think what we have to do is to reduce the number of tasks, and underneath those bullet points that are tasks, list those things underneath that task that are attached to that are executionable. This is a lot of words. It's a lot of paperwork. It's, I think, a tough thing to hand to somebody and say, hey, Michael Looney, make all of this happen. I think we need to prioritize tasks. I think we need to be supportive of the challenges and the issues that are out there. But what we can't be is making excuses, and I'm not saying they are, so make sure there's no point on that. But we have to make sure we know we are in West Texas. That's not an excuse for not being successful. We've always been in West Texas. Our location has not changed. The challenges that exist for West Texas exist. That's where we are. That's where we live, and that's where we want to make things happen. And second of all, unemployment is not a good excuse for lack of economic development. Many cities have lower unemployment rates than we do. What you have to do is make sure that businesses that we're trying to attract understand that we're going to find a way to find the workforce. A good example, Amarillo, Texas just landed two major developments, and they readily said, we don't have the 1,600, the 2,000 people that are going to be needed to make these businesses happen. But we've got 2.5 to 3 years to get the people trained, employment available to make these companies successful. And I know that workforce development is something that is important to the chamber. They've talked about it, they're working on it. But these things exist. We've got to have a plan of action, tasks that help us get to the end result of telling our story and recruiting businesses or expansion of businesses to help us be successful. I'm proud of the city of San Angelo. I'm proud of who we are, what we are, and I know that we are a community that many people would like to be a part of. How we go find them, where they're at, how we get the message out in terms of what we are is certainly a challenge, but one that I know we have ample people and talent to be able to do that. But I can't accept a scope of services that's 14 tasks. We ought to have 5 tasks with line items underneath those tasks that say these are the things that would need to be done to be successful in accomplishing those tasks. And so this is not a challenge about whether the contract is whether we support the contract or not. It's about scope of services attached to the contract. And I think it needs dramatic review. Other questions or comments? Tom?
So, Michael, how long, and we may have to ask, just bounce around the finance, was this the exact same contract that was before and before? I mean, is it updated? Does it change every time it comes for renewal? Or has this been the same one we've used for the past 10 years?
I think this has changed to a small extent each time. Because of the way this came through the COSA DC board, this one, as it sits before you, is exactly as it is expiring. And so that's how it would move forward if you approve today. And it would be altered by the amendment that we would propose in subsequent action.
Well, I'll agree with the mayor. It's not about the money. It's about updating it. It's anything to make a document shorter that, number one, grants it more flexibility, but also gives it more accountability to our constituents and the money we're paying out. I'm in favor for. But I'll agree with the mayor. As you sit down and go through 14 pages of this document, it looks, there's times it's excessive, but it's very broad. And we want to look at if it's a 2-year document, we want to measure things over a 2-year period and get a look at it. And I think our constituents deserve that. Everybody that's put their heads together on this has really worked hard to try to move with something that makes it work, but the deliverables need to be looked at. And I would certainly say an amendment moving forward. Now, if I understand it right, this come to us on a vote up, yes or no, correct?
Post-CDC level.
And I want to make sure that there's input from multiple areas. Certainly the Chamber of Commerce's input on it, certainly the person expected to execute it, which is Michael Looney. I mean, he's been doing this, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. How many? 8. So I think Michael Looney needs to have the ability to input on some of these tasks. I think, again, I repeat, 14 tasks. It's not right, and it needs to be revised. It needs input from someone we are going to expect to deliver on this contract. And I think that we as a council we've got some new new appointees on COSA DC. I know I'm not talking into this. We have some new appointees on COSA DC, and I want to make sure that multiple people have input on this and not a contract with an Exhibit A scope of services attached to a contract that was last year's or the year before. There's references to COVID in here. So I think we need serious evaluation, and I want us to be successful. I want us to know at the end of the day, whenever we have presentations made to us, that it is attached to the deliverables and a commitment to the scope of services expected by the Chamber of Commerce and their team of people. Karen?
Since we are discussing amendments that are suitable to this particular contract, I would like to put forward the possibility that we consider amending the contract to be 1 year in length rather than 2. And the primary reason for that is the fact that we are lacking a director at COSA DC, and it might be a courtesy to the incoming new director that we have opportunity for that person also to put their eyes on, put their mark on what is happening going forward. So it's less limiting for a newcomer to serve, if that makes any sense at all. And I'd also like to ask if it would be possible to invite Mr. Koenig to come forward. I have a question for him that I think might be useful given the discussion.
Sure.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Walt Koenig, representing the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce. Delighted to be here to talk about this contract. How can I help?
I would be very interested in having you give the room and those listening online or by television a brief description of what is meant by the term economic gardening and how that informs the work that you do at the Chamber.
Well, economic gardening is really a business retention and expansion effort where we look at our local businesses and we treat them as long-term accounts versus single transactions. And we work with those entities when they come in to ensure that they are facilitated in their growth plans and they grow as in a garden. So the greatest example of that we have is the SMC Global account. They started with a relatively modest warehousing facility. And over the years, through continued work with them, their executive leadership, and the local folks here in San Angelo, we've been able to substantially grow their presence. And so economic gardening is really about taking care of those businesses that are here so that they have the opportunity to grow and flourish.
Thank you. I think that's important, and I realize it doesn't stop you from economic harvesting or whatever you would refer to it as, where you go outside to attract new businesses to come to San Angelo. But I think it's helpful for everyone to understand that you are actively involved in supporting local entrepreneurs and seeing that they get to next level success.
And some of that is Economic Development Division, and some of that's Core Chamber. I mean, with the Core Chamber, we are very, very involved with our smaller local businesses to make sure that they have the facilitation, training, resources, and market exposure to grow. But from the industrial standpoint, that's where we work with the Allen Transports, the SMC Globals, and the others to ensure that once they establish here, they have a successful experience so that they want to continue to invest in our community and invest in our workforce and invest in their development. So, business retention and expansion is an incredibly important part of what we do because not only does that help us grow our economy, it also keeps our local industrialists on board with the agenda, and they get the love and care that they need.
One of the things, I love numbers, and I like talking about numbers, and I look at what is sort of a 54,000 population workforce here. And I always want to remind people that let's say we recruit a new company who needs 100 people. Those 100 people are a very small part of the already existing 54,000 people that are looking for jobs here in San Angelo, Texas. There's also an 80-20 theory that always says 80% of your 20% of your business will come from 80% of your customers. And so it says that statistic tells you that our greatest growth and opportunities probably exist with those people that are already here. And so the other issue with this contract is the following. 2 years ago, or maybe it was a year ago, the business expansion was done by a person in the Business Resource Center under Guy Andrews. So if that person had that job, but that person's no longer here because she got promoted, but we had another person in that job, so who is doing it? Is it the new economic development person, Guy Andrews' replacement, or is it the Chamber's responsibility? And certainly it's both. But on the other hand, the scope of services should be reflective of that and make sure that we are, and there's a line item in here that says that. But again, we can't be pointing fingers, no, it's your job, no, it's your job. Well, whose job is it? And someone owning that. And I think SMC Global, although they're a relatively new company here, they're not someone who's had a history of 50 years here, or 40 years here, or 30 years here, or 20 years here, not even 10 years.
Correct.
And they certainly have found this to be a great community to grow their business in, and we're proud of that. And they're a great example. There are other great examples of people we've worked with who've been here a long time.
And we continue to do that.
And you continue to do that. Our citizens want to know, first and foremost, what are we doing for those people already here? Yep. And the question I always ask is, why do you keep looking outside our city limits for companies? How about me?
Indeed, and especially when we're applying public funds to attracting new businesses, obviously that creates some potential turbulence with our existing businesses who may not have had such an opportunity. So we're very conscious of that. It's a great discussion. I will say, and Michael Dane alluded to this earlier, The chambers wanted to have this update done. We're very on board with making sure that we're all aligned. I'm a big fan of strategic planning, and I'm a big fan of collaborative effort. And at the Chamber of Commerce, we are certainly looking forward to having meaningful dialogue across all constituencies to make sure that we mobilize our considerable resources in an effective way. You have my commitment on that. You have my team's commitment on that. And we look forward to really a great 2023 going forward with those resources marshaled. In response to your question, who's responsible for business retention expansion, we have picked up the ball on that given the transition that's occurring. We're certainly happy to take and bring more resourcing and more collaborative effort into that. As I said earlier, Chamber of Commerce proper really looks after the small retail, medium enterprise segment of our business population, and our EDD typically looks at the more industrial or primary job holding companies, and that division of labor seems to work, although there's not a hard, bright line between those kinds of enterprises, so there's a lot of collaborative effort that goes across that as well.
Well, one of the things that I said at a different meeting, and I want to make sure we're very clear on this, is that all of us are economic developers because we all have relationships with other people. We all have people that we are close to that will come to us and talk to us, or people out there with, hey, I thought about this. No one owns singularly economic development. No one.
I would concur.
Not the chamber, not the Coastal DC Board, not the whatever. We've got to get out of this, well, that's our job. Well, that was what. No, see, we're a community. And we are a community that welcomes and needs growth. Whether it's internally or externally, what we need to do is stop being defensive about who's doing economic development. If I can bring, if Harry can bring, if Karen can bring somebody to the table, let's welcome that instead of being so nervous about who brought it to the table. We got to stop that. We've got to work together. We've got to stop putting up barriers between the organizations and worrying about who said what and whose strategy was it. This is not the right strategy when we start trying to point fingers and accuse people of, well, she said or he said and they did. No, this is our community, our commitment. And we've got to develop that strategic mentality. We are all economic developers, but we've got to make sure that we keep everyone informed and that someone heads up that economic development so that we've got a key person for communication and a key person for follow-up. And I would say that one of Michael Looney's best characteristics is this. He's a great closer. And I will tell you, in the business of sales, they always ask for the order. Get the order. And I think Michael Looney is really good at getting the order. If somebody provides him with a contact, a relationship, or an opportunity, let's make sure we close the deal, regardless of who brought it and regardless of economic development does not get housed in a building and an office.
Totally agree. I'm on the same page with you, Ms. Mayor. I'll recall, I started on April 1st of 2020. We were going into a very, very turbulent economic condition, which was full of uncertainty and a lot of fear. I saw this community come together and work together to get through that in ways that were far superior than most of our peer communities in the region. There's a reason for that, and it's because we had the relationships and we had that kind of collaborative effort. I want to see that because that's what my expectation is, because that's been my experience with San Angelo since I've been here. I brag frequently about how well the city works in terms of the collaboration between our elected officials, our city staff, and our organizations such as the Chamber of Commerce, and I believe very strongly that that strategic alignment is one of the things that earns us a lot of businesses, because a lot of businesses look at communities and how well they work as part of their calculus in terms of whether they're going to move there or not. So we're totally on board with respect to the vision and the process you put forth. We look forward to working, as I said before, collaboratively with all constituencies to make sure that we have a strong direction going forward. And I would concur, Michael Looney's a great closer. Mike Berry's a great asset that we've added to our team as well. He's an expert in terms of workforce development, and that's one of the things that we as a Chamber of Commerce have laid out as a key strategic objective for not only 2022, but 2023 and beyond. And as the mayor alluded to earlier, we are making some good progress in terms of bringing educational institutions in line with our industrial and commercial job providers to make sure that those educational decisions are made to create graduates which are easily transportable into meaningful work. I speak in front of a lot of student bodies, be they at the ISD, Howard College, or ASU. The thing I always ask is how many of y'all are going to stay after you graduate? And there's a smattering often. But the thing I also say is I don't want a single graduate to leave our community because they don't see an opportunity to stay from a professional standpoint. And we take that very seriously. That's a commitment I make to the students, and we work very hard to make that happen.
Joe Rollo sent me an article that I think is very profound about keeping people here in San Angelo. And it is that the more that you get those individuals involved in nonprofit organizations or volunteering, and they get connected to the community because of those efforts, the better your chance of keeping them in this community. And so we need to make sure that we're really working with Howard College and ASU to find those people who we would love to have as volunteers or part of a nonprofit organization volunteer or whatever level. Get them connected to this community.
Yes, ma'am.
Make sure that they understand what a great community is and that we would work towards their passion in terms of finding a job that is a livable wage, not an entry-level job.
Yes, ma'am. And you're apart from myself and my wife, I think you're the most frequent ribbon-cutting attenders, and I appreciate that involvement with our business community. I think you've seen that we have pulled in Rams in Leadership as part of that process. We have now over 20 Rams in Leadership individuals who've signed up to be a part of the Concho cadre. This is just an example. You're going to see in 2023 a deeper integration between the young professionals of San Angelo and the Chamber itself. In fact, we're working towards moving them to become a department within the Chamber as opposed to an umbrella member of the Chamber kind of orbit. And you'll be seeing that forward progress as well. So we are passionate about making sure we engage our graduates and our students as well as our young professionals to make sure that their quality of life and their opportunity set here is conducive to their lifetime involvement with our community.
I think the greatest opportunity, and we see it on an ongoing basis, is Goodfellow Air Force Base, where a tremendous amount of those people choose to retire here because they had an opportunity to get involved with this city and this community and found a passion, and it's called the love of San Angelo.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're proud of the number of Goodfellow Air Force Base people who choose to maintain here and retire here and stay here.
Yes, ma'am. That's another great resource, and we're very, very involved in terms of the Skill Bridge and other moves towards moving people from active duty in the military into the commercial world, and we're very involved with that as well. So, you know, I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to talk to you all today about this. And as I said before, we're really on board and on the same page as far as where the priorities look. And we're definitely on board to make sure that we continue to drive San Angelo forward.
Thank you. I repeat again, economic development is a community effort. It's not a singular effort, and no board is in total control of economic development. It's all of our responsibilities to make economic development happen.
We all work together to build quality of life as well, which we're very proud of. So thank you. Any further
Karen,
questions?
would you like to make a motion? Oh, wait a minute, Harry?
As we go through and update these things, Michael, with the chamber and everything, I'd like to update the reporting requirements too, so that they come to the council at least twice a year.
Well, it's obligation 4 times a year, so that's not good enough,
Okay.
Harry. It's got to
Well,
be 4 times a year.
On
That's
this one, it doesn't even show it.
Well, in the contract, it actually says the last report should have been done in October. We're in November now, so we're a little behind schedule. But it's 4 times a year, it's quarterly. And so we need to live with that and make sure that we're all informed and updated and enlist our support where necessary.
Transparency is a big deal, and we want to make sure, Mike Looney will give you a report every day if you ask for it.
I know that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Karen, would you like to make that motion?
I move that we accept the contract as written with the exception of Exhibit A, the task summary, and require that the task summary be updated.
And a time frame on that, I think it needs to be done within 3 months, if not 2 months.
If I could, please,
And we mentioned the 1 year as opposed to 2 years, or we just going to go forward?
I think we need 1 year for lots of reasons, but that is not a lack of support for the chamber. So let's be clear on that. It's about other issues attached to an organizational structure. It is not, and it forces us to really deal with this scope of services quickly.
Teresa, do you want to respond, or you don't want me to?
As I indicated earlier, the options for council are to vote what they proposed up or down. We did last week, knowing there might be some anticipated changes or probable changes or possible changes, put this item on the COSA-DC agenda for, is that right?
That's
For
correct.
tomorrow, so they can take action on updating anything. So what we would need you to do, if you want to make changes to what's proposed today, is deny this contract and give guidance on what changes you want to include. You mentioned commingling. I don't know if that's one of the changes you want to take back tomorrow or not.
It's a small, commingling is a small issue. Walt was fully on board with that, and he's already made arrangements for that to occur, and that is something we can work out. I think the 1 year, if that's a strong position for council, I think that forces us to go back to the COSA-DC board. I think the scope of services is something, if you're okay with 2 years, I think we can work scope, you can approve, and we can bring back an amendment for scope of services. But I think if 1 year, I think if you're strong on 1 year, we need to deny and take it to the board with the instruction that that's your preference.
I want to make sure that everybody realizes, thank you, that realizes we only have one council meeting in December. This contract today goes through December 31st, the one that is presently done. So whatever action we take today may influence whether that contract is valid through in January.
I don't think we have to worry about that. First of all, our first meeting in January is like January the 3rd, January the 2nd, January the 4th, that first week, to ratify. And this is a commitment on our, I think this is a commitment that says to the chamber, we support the contract, we support the dollar amount, scope of services must be reviewed, and that can't be done by the December meeting because there's too many people involved who need to be a voice in that. But it is our commitment to the chamber and to the contract by saying this dollar amount is a commitment, and it does not mean we wait until next October to extend it another year. We just want to, or I think what is wanted is an opportunity to relook at what happens to the structure of COSA-DC's management, if you will.
To your point, Harry, that's one reason we did put it on the agenda, so that there's time for COSA-DC to make a new decision if that's what's going to happen, and then for you guys to ratify whatever comes out of tomorrow's meeting as well. Brandon's watching. I just need to give him some guidance as he's watching on what exactly he's going to be drafting for presentation tomorrow.
All of that assumes that the COSA-DC board can come to an agreement about what they would be willing to approve also. So they face the same or a similar situation to you in that they will be hearing from Walt and hearing from me, and I'll be communicating your desires, and then they will be voting their conscience. And
well, what we know is the scope of services will not be outlined by tomorrow. Okay, that we know.
I think you're right, and I don't think there's going to be debate about the need for that to be updated. And a 3-month time period to develop a new scope of services and performance measures would be is something that's doable and probably something that would be accepted. And we have structured that agenda item again tomorrow so that if the COSA-DC board can achieve consensus, they can approve something so that it can be brought back to you in December and approved so that we're seamless at year end.
That's what we want. Yes, go ahead, Tom.
Can you do that in 24 hours, 36 hours?
Well, not the scope of services.
Not scope of services.
No.
Just
So,
the,
but I mean, this thing, if we went to a, so Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a vote yea or nay.
Yes or no on this, what's before you?
So, and if we went with a nay, we would vote it down, and then we would say, COSA DC goes back, goes over scope of services and amendments to come back, but that's pending they get it all and it's agreed on and concluded tomorrow, correct?
What I
we would not
understood-
attempt
Can't, the
scope of services tomorrow.
We can't get that
Just,
done.
just term. Just term is all we would attempt tomorrow with the
Mingling or
idea
no?
that
Commingling as well, or no?
commingling if there's an opportunity.
Okay.
But tomorrow, our attempt would be to achieve consensus on term, and we would not attempt scope of services and performance measures tomorrow. We would still use the 3-month window for that.
So,
If we approved it as is, we have no guarantee that any of that could come back at all.
correct.
Well, we could work on that, but if, it's still up to the COSA DC board to approve an updated scope of services.
So, and I hate to sound grumpy here, but that's a yes or no. If we approve it today, there's no guarantee that anything we want would have to come back.
Yes,
There's
'cause
not
they
a
don't have
guarantee,
to.
but the chamber recommended an update. I feel like, I
Okay,
mean, everybody
let's stop
feels-
with the
Yes,
conversation.
ma'am.
The voting down basically forces it to go back to COSA DC, accepting a 1-year arrangement. And from what I understand, you wanted in Section D of this contract on page 3, all funds received under this agreement shall be maintained by provider in a separate account and without commingling, the same with providers' other funds or accounts.
Yes. Walt's good with that.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not
but
a
you
problem.
want it in the contract. It's not currently in the contract. It will be added to the contract for consideration. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That would be the recommendation to council that COSA DC look at changing the term and adding the commingling language and leaving everything else the same with the understanding that it would come back for amendment on the performance measures and the scope.
Is everyone clear? We're all clear.
clear.
So with that, Karen, can you restate? So all we need to do at this moment is vote down this contract
Yes, with that
and
direction.
send it back to COSA DC. So do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Is there a second? And a second by Tommy. Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, say aye. With none opposed, motion,
I'm opposed.
okay, 1 opposed, so it's 5-1. That is the vote. Thank you very much. And again, it's a support of the Chamber of Commerce's efforts and COSA DC's board. Thank you very much. Item C, consider resolution directing publication of notice of intention to issue combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation to provide funds for sewer system improvement projects and resolving other matters relating to the subject. Tina, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor. Tina Deersky, Director of Finance. This resolution is the first step in funding the Lake Nasworthy Sewer Project. As you'll recall, back in 2019, the voters approved the use of some of the Lake Nasworthy Trust Fund for this project in the amount of approximately $11.5 million. Since then, we've used about $2.5 million of that for preliminary engineering and survey work, leaving a balance of about $9 million. Total project cost came in at about $51.5 million, leaving us short about $42.5
We always talked about a
million.
$32 million project. That was the number that's always been out there. So if you're looking at 52 versus 32, that's a $20 million increase.
Correct.
Which is hard to swallow. And we want some discussion on this.
Yes, ma'am. So the amount of the debt issue that was before you would be about $44 million, and that coupled with the $9 million would leave about $1.5 million in contingency, depending on how the bids come back. Again, those funds could be used for other sewer projects if it's a little bit in excess, but that's what the amount is before you today for discussion. Let me pull up my slide here. Again, this is the first step in approving the funding. The funding is intended to The bond proceeds are intended to be issued on February 7th, the same day that we would be bringing, hopefully, the bids for award. Shane would be bringing those, obviously. The estimated interest is about 5.1% right now and amortized over a 25-year term, of course, supported by water and sewer system revenues. Again, to be sold in the open market mid-January with closing to occur in February. You have any other questions on the financial or bond side?
So the difference between 44 million and 52 million, those funds, where are those funds?
We're currently allocated in the the sewer capital projects fund. There's $9 million there left over from the Lake Nasworthy Trust Fund monies that were allotted by the voters.
Is there do we believe that the 5.1%, I know there's an asterisk on that, but based off of current interest, how do we get to 5.1 or lower? Because that's a key issue.
Yes, ma'am. That's current interest rates plus 25 basis points to hedge against potential upward pressure on rates.
So what happens if we get lower interest?
Then we'll take it. We do go out for bid on that, and so we will go with the best bid that we receive.
I think the big issue, and I'm sure several people have questions, but continue and then we'll throw these questions out there.
So as far as the financial side, of course, I'll tell you that there will be one interest payment due this fiscal year. I've met with Shane and Andy. We've gone through their financials. They can do that this year within their current budget capacity. And then next year, we would have the full debt service amount of just over $3.1 million, and it would remain right around that amount for the rest of the 25-year term of the bond issue. And that would go, and so with that, our total debt service payment from the sewer side would be $13.5 million going all the way to 2031, at which point some of our bonds will be paid off, freeing up some of our capacity. And then in 2032, we'd have about $5.5 million of debt service. So just to give you kind of a broader financial picture of where the sewer funds are.
So you say that year again?
And so it'll be about $13.5 million through 2031 based on the models that Vince at Specialized Public Finance has provided. And then the total debt service payment in 2032 would be about $5.5 million, $8 million cheaper, being that some of our debt will come off.
My point is that everyone up here who's going to be voting and making comments concerning this project, you will be making that decision for future councils and mayors. And we need to be respective that maybe we can afford it today, but they've got to figure it out down the road. Now, on the other hand, I will say the following, that the Lake Nasworthy development opportunities are huge when we get this sewer line done. I mean, I think we all know that from a asset, Lake Nasworthy offers tremendous opportunity. If we don't do this sewer project, then we're going to continue like we have over the past 10 years, lose tremendous opportunities for development. So it's significant in terms of moving this city forward and taking this Lake Nasworthy asset and making the most out of it possible. But it is a $52 million hard pill to swallow.
Yes, ma'am. And going back to what you said on obligating future councils, I will just say that the capacity that we'll be using, that $3.1 million going forward for debt service, of course, will eat up capacity in the sewer capital funds that would currently they are using for pay-as-you-go capital as we try to keep up with our street improvement project program. And so just to be fully transparent, you know, there may be in the future need for additional capacity. As well, we have the Concho River Water Project that will be coming up in the next few years. We know that that'll be a big project that will also impact the sewer and water funds. So with that, that's pretty much the financial picture associated with the bond issue. If you have any questions as far as the project, I know that there is an engineer here from CDM Smith who's available for questions on the project side as well.
Okay. I think that we should have the engineer come forward and answer questions.
I'll have Shane Kelton introduce him,
okay,
if you don't mind.
Shane,
Yes.
if you don't, not to mention, Mayor, you mentioned the development opportunities could be lost at and in or around the lake, not to mention the airport as well. We have
that's
got
right.
to get some, we've got to do the project just because of the opportunities that we have at the airport that are facing us that can't be done because we don't have sewer capacity, so.
The lost opportunities we've
Yes.
had over the past
Yes.
years, and
Yes.
that's key.
Yes.
Okay, Shane, you're on.
Mayor, Council, thank you. Yeah, I think you made a great statement in your, in the last item up here that in the last 18 months to 24 months, there's been a lot of change in the world and definitely in the world of construction. So when we first brought this to you back a year and a half ago or so, made this presentation that it was, we were looking at a $32 million project. As we came into this last year and we're finalizing, I want to give the guys at CDM Smith a shout out because those guys really, they knuckled down and they really got this project put out in record time as far as getting it engineered and constructed, along with all the, when you talk about 11 miles and all of the easements and all the different things and all the archaeological studies and all the things that we had to go through to get this thing put together, those guys have really done a great job trying to get this out in a really quick turnaround. But we've seen huge adjustments in the market in construction, whether that's road construction, sewer, water construction, all of it's gone up, and we've really seen that on the utility side and the water and sewer side. The cost of pipe has just exploded. And so, but to kind of go through is these guys finished up their 100% last week as we're getting ready to go out to bid. Of course, part of that 100% is getting a new opinion of probable cost put together and sending that in with the package. And when they sat down to recalculate their opinions of probable cost, it came out significantly higher than what we had expected 18 months ago. We knew it was all going to be high, but I think we were all shocked at how high it came back. But we do have Alan Wilkie here this morning with CDM Smith, one of the primary folks on design with CDM Smith to help kind of walk through some of these costs associated with it. So I'll let him get up here and kind of talk about the project and some of these associated costs. And then I'll be glad to answer any other questions about the project and what we can do moving forward. Alan?
Thank you, Shane. Mayor, Council, here to answer any questions. I will say that the project, as Shane was saying, 80% of this project cost is in the pipe part of it. The project includes the pipe from South Chadburn all the way to the old railroad right-of-way, then it splits and goes north-south, south along to Country Club Road to cross Lake Nasworthy and the new lift station near South Concho A. The pipe part of it will be bid as a separate project from the lift station. 80% of this project cost is the pipe. The pipe installation, buying and installing the pipe. And a good chunk of the pipe part of the project is in the material itself. We have been using, as an industry, plastic pipe for years and years because it's fights corrosion that goes on inside the pipe. It's fairly watertight, things like that. The plastic that's made, the plastics are made using oil and natural gas. We've all seen the prices of oil and natural gas and the impact that that's had on our own personal economy, but that's what's having the biggest impact on the cost of this project. Pipe has just gone up so significantly in the last 18 months. A few years ago, we were bidding, and one of the metrics that we use when we look at projects is we take the total cost of the project and divide it by the total number of feet of pipe and the total inches of pipe. So it's a product of inches times feet. So in this case, we have 11 miles of pipe, but it ends up, every stick of pipe is multiplied by the diameter. Not that long ago, we were getting pipe in the ground, in rock, for about $11 or $12 an inch foot. A year ago, we were bidding a project, and it was probably going at about $22 an inch foot. Right now, we are estimating this project all in at about $33 an inch foot. So that inflation has, as Shane was mentioning, has just been going faster and faster in the construction market, and as he mentioned, certainly in the utility market as it relates to plastic pipe. I had a client the other day who just got quotes for pipe delivered on the ground, not sitting in the ground or installed, that was $10 an inch foot, bare pipe. So it's the materials of this project have driven the cost.
We are making provisions in the bid. I'm going to change topics a little bit. We are making provisions in the bid. There are some, the project is bid for not only taking care of what's out at Lake Nasworthy now, but also well into the future. Also looking at potentially doing some other things that would allow other lift stations in the city to be taken off and to remove that maintenance and operational facility to be taken offline and served by gravity. Some of those could be postponed if the project needed to be reduced in scope. But as it sits right now and as it was discussed with council, using the best information we have on the markets as they exist today, this is where we are.
You would, I would, because there's so much involved in the cost of the pipe, one would ask the question, or I should make a statement, we would hope that the highest price of fuel today has reached its height. That we don't know that, but you would hope that between whether it is across the nation, across the world, less development, or maybe more development or more hurricanes, so it requires more whatever. But we're pricing this, I'm assuming, at the height of the price of PVC pipe right now.
Yes, we're using the prices right now, and I, as a personal interest, keep track of or follow the oil and gas prices. 18 months ago, natural gas was about $2.50 to $3 a thousand cubic feet. After the invasion of Ukraine by Russia and the shutting down of the pipelines, it was $9 a thousand cubic foot. And some of that was us taking our gas, putting it on LNG ships and shipping it to Europe. It's down now to about $5.50, I think, as of this morning. It's 2.5 times what it was in 18 months ago.
This is why I kept pushing to get it done 2.5 years ago,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of engineering that goes into that, Mary.
That's a joke.
Okay.
But
Yes,
That was a
absolutely,
statement.
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
If we would have had this done 2.5 years ago, we would have saved $20 million.
Possibly on materials, that's correct, Mayor. So we will be bidding the project competitively. We will be issuing invitations to bid for public bids. We will be, opening it up to a number of pipe manufacturers. They're all PVC pipe manufacturers, but there are a number of manufacturers, some with operations in Lubbock, which we hope will be, close enough. The second biggest price after material is shipping the pipe from the manufacturing facility to the site. So having one in Lubbock would be advantageous to us. But anyway, that seems to be the biggest impact on the cost of the project. Everything's had inflation, as we've talked about, but it's the PVC pipe specifically on this project that's the big concern.
Who has a question or comment or a question?
So, as we look at it's just like contracts for corn, oil, cotton, everything. Everything goes up and everything goes down, and it goes over a period of time. If you go to contract this, Shane, are we able to pull this in and if the price of, we hope with what EU guidelines are being rushed through and things over the next 60 days that we'll see a further decline in petroleum-based products. But long story short, I'd hate to contract something in at $32 a square, $32 a linear foot, and in 360 days it's $20 a square foot. Do we monitor it and buy? What's your plan? Are we going to try to buy it all at once? Or are we going to watch it and see what, roll the dice? And that's a hard question to go, but it's something constituents need to know, that we're looking not only at this year, but we're looking at 24 and 25 too.
Yeah. With the competitive bid process and with the uncertainty of the markets, when we go out to bid, the people that submit the bids are going to bid it based on whatever the market is that day, and they feel that they can hold those prices for the. Of course, we're trying to, we're going to try to open bids on the 24th, and we're going to try to award on February 7th, January 24th, open the bids and award February 7th, and then that way we can get it turned around, and whoever we award the bid to can lock in those prices, because based on what we're seeing right now, most contractors will not hold pipe prices for 30 days. So we're trying to make sure that these guys are going to be willing to hold those prices for whatever they bid. And so right now it's just the way the economy is, and the way the whole environment is. We're looking at chemical costs in the same manner as well. The chemical prices are just volatile and moving up rapidly, and so holding prices for a week sometimes is too much for them. It's too much risk for them. So while I would like to be able to buy it in chunks, hoping that it would go down, that's just through the competitive bid process. I don't believe that that's going to be a reality in this situation.
Buy it all at once. I mean, I'm not near as worried about it going up as I am going down. I mean, if it goes down, there's a lot of profit in somebody's pocket that it's just a matter of consequence and market.
Well, and they will, but when they buy the pipe, they will buy it all right then. I mean, they will order it and they will buy it and they will have it shipped.
What do they do with it for 3 years as we're trying to use it? I mean, do they have a warehouse?
And we're planning on this being a 24-month contract. So we're not planning on it being a 3-year contract. We're planning on it being a 24-month contract. And hopefully, due to some of our soil conditions and some of the depths that we're going, we're hoping that our contractors will be able to make better time than even that. But we believe for the purpose of the bid and to allow plenty of time to get the best bid possible, a 24-month contract is going to be our best bet. So we're afraid if we start shaving some of that construction time off, that the bids will probably go up. So again, it's kind of one of those that we're trying to kind of make sure that we're being as safe and prudent as possible as we get ready to bid this project out. But they would buy and they would store this pipe on site. They would stage it throughout the project on site where they're going to need the pipe.
I have one other. Are the professional fees immune from any of this price increase or decrease that we've already negotiated on consulting and everything? I mean,
Yes, from the consulting. Now, they are going to provide construction services for us and RPR services for this. They're not necessarily basing that on a percentage. They're basing it on an hourly rate for their professional services. So those numbers have pretty much been locked in. So from that standpoint, and then we also are looking at moving forward as we look into, once we bid at those services, whatever their profit and overhead for the construction company will be locked in at that point.
thank you, Shane. That's all my
What's the contingency dollar amount?
Of course, we do pre-bid. We're looking at the contingency from the bonding aspect of it. I believe Tina said there'd be about 1.5 million that we would have to give us a little flexibility if the bids did come in a little higher. Alan, what was your contingent?
I think we were 5%, so a couple, $2.5 million or so.
Yeah, 5%, $2.5 million would be the contingency within the actual bid documents themselves.
$2.5 million in contingency. Well, let's make sure we don't need the contingency and save $2.5 million.
We're going to do everything we can, Mayor, I promise.
Other questions or comments? Larry?
I have a question. I think it's for Ms. Dursky and Mr. Vasilio. This is kind of where the rubber meets the road question, and it's based on the amount of this, it should be a pretty stable figure, but how much does this add to the water and sewer bills for the city?
Are you talking about commercial and residential utility statements? Right now, it's not, but that is why Mayor brought up that we're obligating future councils, and that is why I said to be transparent. We have the capacity to do this, yes, we do, but it may put pressure on, say, keeping up with streets or longer term down the road. When we get to the water reuse project, that may eat up additional capacity, and at some point, we will have to probably look at rates. We know we're in an inflationary economy. We know that we're seeing other utility bills and rates increase. We haven't increased our rates since January of 2020, and we've been fortunate not to have to do so. So at this point, there will be no changes to the rate, but I imagine that, looking into the future and trying to keep up with our CIP and all the projects that we have on the horizon, at some point, of course, that will be bound to happen.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions or comments? Then do I have a motion for approval?
Mayor, I move approval of this
Tom?
resolution.
Great, Tommy and Harry seconded this. Any comment from the public on this item? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion, any nays? Hearing none, motion passes 6-1. Our next item is item D, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance.
I think
for-
that was a 6-0.
6-0, Mayor.
What did I say?
6-1. You said 6-1.
I'm still bouncing around in
Well,
your thoughts
Lucy,
over there.
no.
Lucy was opposed.
6-0, sorry.
6-0.
Rent-free.
All right, item D. Thanks for paying attention, guys. I was just checking you, see if you were listening.
You're
I
on.
knew, yeah. First reading and public hearing of ordinance for Z22-21 to rezone properties from the single-family residential zoning district to the two-family residential zoning district being .314 acres, located at the northwest corner of North Marie Street and Beacon Street. John, you're on.
Thank you. As you mentioned, this is a rezoning from RS1 to RS2. You can see the location here. The Houston Heart is south, and Producers Park is just to the north, so that's kind of the area. As you can see here, this is kind of a mixed area. There's a little bit of commercial and industrial off to the left there. And then the homes are largely single-family, but there are a few mobile homes mixed in. And as you can see, these are very narrow lots. I think my guess is they were originally planned for mobile homes, given how narrow they are. And so the applicant is proposing to rezone the RS2 so that they can build duplexes across the lot lines of those lots. We did send out our notices, did not receive any in opposition. As I mentioned, this will allow the construction of duplexes. It is consistent with the area because there is a mixture of uses there. It's an infill project in an area that's not seen a whole lot of development, so we think this is similar to some things we've seen in this larger area of taking RS1 lots and rezoning them for duplexes in order to make the financials work for development of these lots that haven't been developed for forever. Staff does recommend approval, and the Planning Commission also recommended approval unanimously. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Whoops, as I ate the microphone. For John,
Move approval, Mayor.
motion, a second by Harry. Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing no nays, motion passes 6-0. Item E, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance for Z22-22 to rezone properties from the neighborhood commercial to the low-rise multifamily residential zoning district, being .413 acres located at the southwest corner of South Pierce Street and West Beauregard Avenue. And you're on, John.
Thank you. As you can see here, this is the shopping center area there on Beauregard, just after it splits from Sherwood. And then to the left here is largely single-family neighborhood. There's a little bit of a commercial right there. This property was rezoned to neighborhood commercial just a few years ago. A proposal to build a small retail on that site. That basically fell through, and the new owner is looking to do apartments on that site. And so that's the rezoning to RM1, which is our lowest, basically lowest density apartment. It is under a half an acre, so it's limited in terms of size, so it couldn't be a big apartment complex. And I believe the proponent is proposing 6 units on the property. You can see here it is right at that edge. This area is all shown as neighborhood center in our future plans, and then neighborhood to the other side. So it is kind of in that boundary transition area, which is one of the reasons that when this was rezoned a few years ago, neighborhood commercial was considered appropriate. But again, now they're wanting to go back to residential, but not single family, but instead for apartments. We did send out our notices and received one in opposition across Beauregard, across the street. I will note that none of the homes on that block that would be adjacent to this were in opposition.
Isn't there a big apartment complex right behind there? Or catty corner?
Down the block.
Yeah, a block or two away.
Block
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. And so here are just a few pictures. There's the restaurant that's immediately across the street, and you can see across the other direction, across Pierce, is the shopping center. That being a transition area is one of the reasons staff is recommending approval. Even though it is adjacent to these homes, that we believe that the small scale of the apartments that would be allowed and being on such a major street is consistent with the area. It is also near a bus stop. I'll note that the housing study did indicate a need for what's called the missing middle. We get a lot of development that are single-family homes and a lot of development in big 300-unit apartment complexes, small-scale duplexes, 4-unit buildings, sort of like the ones that are just a block away. That's the kind of thing that aren't being built much and haven't been for the last few decades. But it is something that is a desirable part of the market, that the market's just not meeting that need. This is an area we think is appropriate for that sort of 6-unit apartment, and so that would meet that need that has been identified. Staff does recommend approval. The Planning Commission also recommended approval. It was a 4-2 vote. They had quite a bit of discussion at their meeting, and the two that were opposed were really just concerned of apartments being right next to single family, particularly the one of the items discussed was the fact that it could be 2 stories, although staff pointed out that a single-family home could be 2 stories on that side as well, and the existing neighborhood commercial would also allow a 2-story commercial building on that site. So going from commercial, we believe it's a step back to go to apartments there, especially with only 6 apartments. And so I'll also add, I don't think the applicants here, his indication at the Planning Commission was that these would be single-story. You have no ability to require that with straight zoning, so he's allowed to do what the zoning allows him to do, but his intention at this point is 6 units, single-story. So at least that's my understanding.
Okay, I'm going to open it up for questions and comments. Karen, it's in your district. You want to start?
Yes, please. Thank you. I attended that Planning Commission meeting. I remember that conversation very well. Would you let the group know here gathered what the definition is of low rise so that we're familiar with that? And I would also ask, of course, it's sort of lobbying, but we are interested in a landscape ordinance. The city does not have one, and because it is adjacent to single-family homes, I'm hoping that this will not be a project that is on a concrete pad. There's one that is just finishing up now near Fort Concho. I think you know the one I'm discussing. I wouldn't want to see something like that. I would want to see a better transition to that neighborhood, which is adjacent.
The short answer is we don't have a landscaping ordinance now, and so there's little we can do.
We can't do it.
If we do have some ability for larger developments, so if they're over a certain square footage, I doubt this would create enough building footprint that would be triggered. In those cases, we can review landscaping. Unfortunately, on the one you're talking about, we did review their landscaping plan, and it sometimes graphics look better than what ends up on the ground, and that's an example of that I think we've learned from. In terms of low-rise multifamily, basically it's the same limit as single-family. And I believe it's 35 feet high, which is also the same for the neighborhood commercial. And so that basically would allow 2 stories. 35 feet, you could maybe squeeze in 3 stories if, especially with a single-family home. Those heights are a little bit less, but a typical development these days, that really just gets you 2 to 2.5 stories.
Other questions or comments on this item?
So I'll make a comment. Neil Grant, that owns the Outdoorsman, had spoke to me about this a couple times, and his concern was just like kind of what you're talking about, Karen. It was a 2-story facility that would block the visibility of his commercial business if you were traveling from west to east. I spoke with John yesterday, and John pointed out very clearly that it's going to have the appropriate setbacks that it needs to have, doesn't decrease the visibility. And number 2, you rung the bell on it real clearly, is somebody could already put a 2-story facility there. I mean, it doesn't change. So I spoke with Neil yesterday morning, I saw him yesterday evening, and he understands it. He's good with, he's glad that there's going to be the appropriate setbacks for him to go ahead and operate and move forward. So
I actually think it's a good use of the property, and tease me all you want, but I'm also concerned with the visual impact down the road. We don't want to create a situation that's unattractive in short order for any reason, whether it's softened by landscape or by setbacks or architectural design. So I'll look forward to seeing the visuals, and we'll hope that we can read them correctly.
So is that a motion for approval?
It is.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Tom. Any public comment on this item?
Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, it passes 6-0. Okay, that concludes the regular agenda. What I would like to do before we go to closed session, if possible, to go ahead and do the consideration of approving various board nominations. If we could go ahead and do that. It's Economic Development Corporation, Rick Mantu is my appointee to first full term ending February 2024.
So moved.
So moved by Tommy.
Second.
Second by Tom. Any opposition or comment? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion passes 6-0. We do want to discuss and confirm upcoming meeting dates because we have a canvassing of the returns of November 8th, 2022 election, which will be held Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022. Do I have two people who'd like to volunteer to do that? Harry will and Tommy usually does.
I am going to be in Estes Park, Colorado.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, folks.
I thought I saw Karen raise her hand just a second ago.
There you go, it's Karen. It's Carrie and Harry.
I'll do it.
Okay, so with that done, we will now move into our closed session, which is an executive session under the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, exceptions to requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. A, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney regarding the West Texas Water Partnership. We are now adjourned for our closed session. We call this meeting back to order at 11:55 a.m. and there are no announcements to be made following executive session. So at this point, what I'm looking for is a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
So
And a
moved by
second.
Tommy, a second by Tom. Any opposed or public comment? No, any public comment? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. 6-1. Who's counting?